And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Clever Tips for Teachers. My name is Rhiannon Gutierrez, and I'm the Director of Digital Learning for BPS Technology. I'm really excited to be speaking with you all about some of the ways that you can use Clever, either as a teacher, a BPS staff member, or someone at the district level. So hopefully there's something in here for all of you, whether you are new to Clever or an experienced user. If this is your very first webinar with us, we always run these webinars by asking people to fill out a form either at the beginning or the end to note their attendance. And we do this because we want to make sure that if you are a teacher, then you can get PDPs at the end if we're going to combine all of your attendances on all the webinars. Also, we are not going to be sharing the slides with you during the webinar. We're going to share them after, as well as the recording. So if you fill out the form, it helps us know who participated so we can send it to you afterwards. And also, I want to make sure that everybody is using their name in Zoom. So if you are identified right now as an ID number, which looks like no one is, then we ask for you to change that to make sure that we know who you are. And please use the chat box to ask a question. Because everyone is muted, we want to make sure that if you have any questions, that you type them in the chat. Right now, they're being sent to me specifically, so I'll be able to see them and respond to them either in real time or at the end. You can also raise your hand if you have a more immediate question that you would like to ask me. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and post the link to the form in the chat so that you can have access to it right now, either to fill it out immediately or towards the end. Okay, let me do that for you. So link to form. Now, it's a little tricky. You can't exactly just click on the link to open the form. You may have to highlight it and copy and paste it. Or you can click on, I think you might be able to right click it to hit copy. So those are two ways you can copy the link because you can't click on it. All right, so as you know, this is being recorded. So everything I'm discussing, you'll be able to reference later on as you have more questions about Clever. So today we're going to be talking about Clever. I'll share some key Clever resources with you that will help you along your journey, as well as the current portal and the apps that are in it. We'll also be reviewing some apps from Common Sense Media, which is an organization that does ratings and reviews on different apps and websites. If you are someone who's wondering, hey, what other apps can I potentially add? Or how can you tell me more about a current app that we have? Also, if you are a classroom teacher, the opportunity to also create your own page. I'll be going over what that looks like as well, because there are different customizations depending on your role in BPS. So you've probably heard of Clever before. There's some quick ways to remember what Clever is and how it is different from other applications out there that we're using in BPS. So Clever is the name of the company. It's also the name of the portal. We also sometimes call it the BPS Digital Backpack. So when we say Clever or the Digital Backpack, we basically mean the same thing. And what it is, it's a secure portal for all BPS approved digital resources. So it's things that we have reviewed and rated and talked to different content folks about before we put them up. It also uses single sign-on, so you don't have to enter new credentials. You shouldn't be entering new BPS email. So when you go to the Clever website, which I'll be sharing with you, you just click on the link to log in with Google, and then you're in. It's a very organized way for you to see all these apps and websites that we're talking about. And part of the way we organize is we organize by category. And you can see the different applications and websites by identifying their icons. So let's say we have a map category and we have an icon there for Pearson. If you click on that Pearson icon, it will take you to the Pearson application or website. So that's how we can look at the applications that are in there. You can also do customizations at the district, school, and teacher level. Now, I'm the person who does them at the district level. The school level would be someone like your principal, or maybe a family liaison if you work closely with the principal. At the teacher level, if you're a classroom teacher and you have a roster already in SIS or Aspen, then you're able to just share apps directly with your students and your students only, not the whole school. Also, finally, and this is something that people might not know about, is that some apps that we have in BPS are only accessible through Clever. So some of those applications include Sora by Overdrive, which is a book app, Lexia, Tumble Books, which is also a book app, as well as Zoom. If you're a BPS teacher and you have been using Zoom, we highly recommend that you go through Clever because you have more security features if you go that way. So again, Clever is a secure place. It uses one login, which is your BPS email. It's supposed to be organized, and it offers you access to applications you cannot otherwise get. So that's the appeal of Clever, if we're talking about the differences between it and something like Google Classroom. So how do we get to Clever? There's a couple links out there. The most commonly shared one is bostonpublicschools.org/backpack. Another link is clever.com/in/Boston Public. I'm going to post both of those links in the chat if you wanted to go and click on it now. But we also will have an opportunity to go live later, so you can look at that link more towards the end if you'd like. But either way, when we go into Clever, there are two links that we can access quite easily. All right, I just posted it in the chat for you. And we have some comments in here about some of these apps I mentioned, like Sora. Sora is a great app. Everyone in BPS has access to that app. So if you're looking for some library books, Sora is definitely a great app for you to check out. So thanks for mentioning that. All right. So there's one document I've also linked to here in the slide deck. And this particular document goes over some things you should be able to do if you're going into Clever. So I would recommend looking at this particular document to do a self-assessment to see, hey, do I know how to sign in? Do I know how to find things? Do I know how to favorite things? Or can I put things in a class? Do I know how to add apps and categories? So look at the scavenger hunt doc as an opportunity for you and for your colleagues to figure out what you still need to know how to do in Clever. I'm going to post a link to this in the chat as well, as a scavenger hunt document. All right. Let me share that one. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I just posted a link to the scavenger hunt in the document in the chat. So you can do a self-assessment to see what it is you know how to do. Hopefully by the end of this, you know how to do all of those things. The very first one, if you've never been into Clever, is to make sure you're able to log in. If you are not able to log into Clever, let me know. Most likely that's because you have a role at the district level. And so we have to make sure you're placed in an appropriate staff category so that you can see it. Because previously, Clever wasn't really open at the district level. It was more based at the school level. Okay, so Clever. How do we get there? I shared a couple of those links with you, the Clever link and the bostonpublicschools.org/backpack link. Now, as a teacher or as a staff member, you will see this page pop up when you go to the website. It'll ask you if you want to log in with Google or with badges. Here's a very important note that you all should know about. If you are a teacher, you definitely want to log in with Google. If you're working with students who are more or less typing, so we're saying grades 2 and up, they will log in with Google. However, if you're working with little ones, I'm talking about our youngest learners, kindergarten, preschool, first grade, or if you're working with special ed students or English learners, the badge option is probably one that you might want to consider using. And I say that because the badge really is a visual, it's a QR code that you can bring up to the camera on your computer or your mobile device, and it brings you right in. There's no typing necessary. And this makes things super accessible to our youngest learners and the students who need that extra support. It takes them to the exact same places it takes all of us. So you can log in that way. A little bit more about badges if you are someone who's working with those populations of students. If you are either a classroom teacher or working with those students, you can actually download those badges for all of the students in your class or in the classes that you have assigned to you in SIS. I'm going to say that again. You have to have classes assigned to you in SIS in order to even download badges for any students, okay? However, if you are a school leader and you are working at a school, then you can actually download badges for the entire school. And that is something that is possible, once again, if you are the school leader. And it's really easy to do. You just have to look for the classes and you can download them. You can even download single badges. If the student might lose theirs, you can generate a new code, or you can do it for the whole class. A lot of teachers actually do this for the home and for school, so students can log in and access some of these applications at home. Another thing that's really important to know about badges is that you do not want to be necessarily sharing that badge anywhere. That QR code is unique like a password. So if you lose that, you do need to generate a new one. So it's really important that students keep that QR code close to them. And so you would be getting these badges specifically in Clever. So I'll just repeat that one more time because there was a question here in the chat that if you are going to be, so once again, your classes are assigned to you in Aspen. If you're in Clever and you are a teacher or a school leader, you would see the option to download badges for your students or for the whole school. And you can print them in bulk. And so you would need to be printing them, cutting them out, and then assigning them to students. All right. So that's really, really important to know. So central office staff would not be downloading badges. It would be schools and teachers. All right. Now the interface is going to look a little different in Clever if you are entering as a staff or as a teacher. For example, teachers, when they log in, are going to see something that looks very similar to what's on my screen right here. They're going to see the option for pages. Your class, just you, and the district page. And then from that point down, they're going to see other applications in there that relate to things that were shared at the district level or at your school level. So once again, as a teacher, you are going to have the option to customize those things across the top that are pages. Things on the bottom or things that the district customizes, not you. This is the teacher view. If you have classes in Aspen, you may also notice, I'm going to zoom in just slightly. I don't know if it'll work, but let's do it anyway. There are 3 tabs at the top right corner where it says homeroom, library, and classes. So the homeroom one is where you would see all your pages that you can click on and customize. We'll be going over that. The classes section here, that is where you would find those badges and those students you're assigned. So for example, if you are a specialist, if you're an arts teacher of some sort, when you click classes, you're probably going to see a lot of different sections on there. If you are only working with one class, you might just see one section on there. And again, this is connected to what's in Aspen. The view for the staff, and this is mostly for folks who are at the district level, not at the school level. I'm going to click on this one more time just to verify. And then these would be people who are in multiple roles or who may have access to various areas. So for example, instead of seeing, I'm not sure if you can notice it, instead of seeing the pages across the top in the homeroom, library, and classes, you're just going to see the apps that we're sharing immediately. So those applications there are going to just be really quite simple for you. You can't really do any customizations at all because you don't have a class to share things with. So really you're just seeing what the district sharing with you. So if you are someone in the math department or in the arts department, for example, you would see the applications there that everyone has access to, more or less. I'm just refreshing this page to make sure you can see what you need to see. Okay, just a couple of our troubleshooting tips here. Let's check on the questions. Okay. So some access issues with the links. We can fix that. Thank you for bringing that up. All right. So hopefully everyone is able to copy the link. I'm going to share that with everyone one more time because I'm really curious to know. Let's just take a moment to process this and go to the Clever links and tell me, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the staff view or are you seeing the teacher view? Okay. Once again, I'm going to post the link in the chat for you to go and log in to Clever. Okay. Okay. All right, remember you want to right click the link I just posted or highlighted and copy and paste it, and then that's what you'll see. Grace just told me that she sees the staff view, the central office view, which is the one that's on my screen right now. I'm curious what other people see. If you don't see anything, that means you don't have access, and I can help you with that. All right, so let's take a moment. All right, very good. So we have someone with teacher view. Okay. All right, we got a mix of teacher views. Awesome. And then district view. Now I have multiple views because of my role. So I'll actually log in again so that you can see what my experience looks like. I'm trying that. It might take me a couple minutes. All right. We have the central view for some people here. Okay, that's good news. Everyone is able to access Clever. That's the best thing we want to hear. It's great. All right. I want you to take some time to actually look at the applications that you see in there right now while I log in. All right. Just tell me what you're noticing. Maybe you actually take time to hover over one of them and look for the little heart to favorite an app that you like. And then favoriting that, bring it up to the top. So let's try doing that. Look for some applications in your content area, favorite it, and it'll bring it to the top. Let's go back to my portal. I think I need to troubleshoot some stuff myself. There we go. Okay, I'm in. All right. Did anybody favorite any apps? If you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat some of the apps you favorited. Someone's asking for some access to applications, and we're going to talk about that. So that's a really good transition point before we do that. All right. Any applications that you're noticing in there right now? Something you favorited? All right. So someone said Newsella is one. You can unfavorite by just clicking on that heart again. Susan mentioned Lexia. That's a big one. Any others? Self-service, Subcentral, and TeachPoint. Those are good ones. All staff could be favoriting those. Adobe Spark, Easy IEP, awesome. And some apps have a question mark, or maybe you mean the I symbol. If you hover over that, it'll actually give you an explanation of what that application is. So we have a few that are favoriting. So this is all for you because, as you know, if you actually scroll through this, there's actually quite a lot of applications, right? And we don't necessarily always want to be looking through all of them. So if we favorite something, it'll bring it up to the top for us. So my current view right now is actually at the district level. So what you're noticing on my screen is a little bit different than yours. Okay, so let's go back. Let's talk about the apps that we see right now. And why we might see some but not others. So I'm going to skip over here. So the structure for teachers. Now, if you have a teacher page, that means that you are listed in Aspen as a teacher. You've been brought in here so you can actually customize apps for your students. If you see school links, meaning that you might see something across the top that relates specifically to your school, that means your principal has done some level of customization. If you're at a school like the Mendel or what's another one, Sumner Elementary, those two schools have actually customized their portal to where the apps for their school are at the top and the district ones are at the bottom. So that's something you can do if you're a school leader or if you're a school-based staff member. And the district links, again, that's everything that's there to folks, things that we've made available for everyone to see. The staff structure is the same pretty much as the teacher one, minus the teacher page. All right, so some questions about, is there an app that you want to add? Is there an app that you're looking for? Is this app free or paid? This is actually a very important question when it comes to Clever. Who it's for, and what you want your students to do with it. This is all super important. And I say this because people might make requests for applications. And we're going to talk about what some of those requests are and why we might have some but not others. For example, if we have an app that's listed in here, then we more or less as a district have vetted this app. Now, just because you're seeing it on my page here doesn't mean it's going to be visible on yours, because the way it works is some schools have certain apps shared with them because they've paid for these apps. So generally, a really good example of that is Lexia. Lexia historically is being paid for at the school level. Right now, we have a district level subscription, so all schools can see Lexia. But Lexia is not something the teachers or schools can just add, because Lexia is not a free app. I'll say it again, Lexia is not a free app. That means that the people on the Lexia's team, representatives from school and us at the district office have to work together to bring Lexia onto Clever. And the reason is because it's paid for and it also has much more deeper levels of integration. So when it comes to integration on Clever, you can just have it be a simple link, or it's syncing with your Aspen, your SIS roster, which makes it a lot more involved and a lot more complicated. Lexia is a great example of a paid-for app that requires rostering and a lot of support for multiple parties. So those applications take more time. We can't just get them up overnight because we need to sync and make sure that everything is working properly. But there are other applications. Suzanne in the chat just mentioned one of them in particular. If you scroll down in particular and look at things like virtual learning sites or things underneath the arts category, for example, a lot of the applications listed under there are more or less website links. So you can access those right now. Some of them are free and some of them are freemium, which means you get some versions of, or some features of it for free, but then you have to pay extra to get more features. And we worked with people like Tony in arts and people like Andre and Stacy in math to put some of these applications up here. And we were really careful. If Andre and Stacy want to mention anything in the chat, they may do so. But I was asking them, hey, who do we want to share this with? So let's go down to the math section to actually see what I'm talking about as an example. So in mathematics here, Pearson is actually an example of a Lexia type app where there's a lot more involvement in syncing that needs to happen. So that was a long conversation. However, other applications that you might notice on the bottom are actually websites like Didax, Math Playground, Which One Doesn't Belong, Virtual Nerd, Toy Theater. These are all websites. And actually, not all students can see these because I worked with Andre and Stacy and Linda to say, is this for teachers to see, or is this for students, or is it for both? And for the most part, they were saying it's just a teacher view. And for some of these, like the Virtual Nerd, that's actually geared more towards the older grades and not the younger grades. So we can customize how it's shared. So if you wanted to actually see an application in here, you have to tell us, like, again, is it free or paid? Who is it for? And also tell us, like, what do you want to do with it? Because maybe this is an application that belongs in a broader category. A really good example of this in particular, and Suzanne mentioned this in the chat, is Padlet. So Padlet is categorized in here as a collaboration app. Now, any content area could use Padlet. And Padlet is a really good example of a freemium app. We just have it here as a link to a website. So you can go in, you can create an account and make your own Padlets. So some of these in here are really digital learning resources for you to be able to create some of the stuff you want for your students or your staff. All right, so as far as requests go, because this is something that I'm noticing in the chat, if you are noticing an app that is paid for and it's rostered, you definitely want to get in touch with me to make sure that we can put that in Clever for you to share with just your school or just with your students. If it's a free app or a free website, you can just do that in your teacher page right now. All right, so Those are a couple things that you can do. All right, so there was another one brought up about ABC Mouse. I actually have more questions I need to ask you about that because ABC Mouse is a freemium app. I don't know if you're paying for it, if you have the free version, how you're sharing it. These are all questions that I'm going to constantly ask you if you say to me, can we get an app in Clever? All right, some apps that I actually do want to highlight for you that are available right now for everyone include Google Classroom. It's a link, takes you to Google Classroom, Google Calendar, great way to manage events, Zoom. If you're a teacher, you really should be using Zoom through Clever. There's also Common Sense Education, and I point this one out because if you are interested in actually looking at digital citizenship curriculum, safe ways to be online, as well as different app reviews and ratings, Common Sense is a great resource for you. So you should definitely check that out, and I'll be sharing that with you as well. And then if you're interested in reading apps, we have Sora by Overdrive, Tumble Books, and Learning Ally. And these are available for all students to access. There is one caveat, however, with Learning Ally. Learning Ally is an application that is specifically for students who are classified as having a reading deficit. So they may have a print disability of some sort, they might be an English learner, or they may have some issues, need reading accommodations. That is Learning Ally's term, reading deficit. So if you're interested in using the tool, there's a lot more training that goes into it. But Sora and Tumble Books are quick and easy to use. You can start using those today. All right. So someone just mentioned Common Sense PD. Yeah, absolutely. We have the link to the website here for you, so you can check that out. And someone is also asking in here about some of the applications regarding Zoom. So Zoom is, if you go through BPS, there are some pretty tight controls. We made it so that only hosts can screen share, that there's no recording, that you have to use a waiting room, and that you also can't have too many things open. And we do this because there's actually been incidents of Zoom bombing, and we want to prevent that from happening. But there are ways that you can make it safer for students. And I'm also happy to have a conversation with you about Zoom outside of this webinar as well. All right. So let's go in and let's look at the updated district portal, because part of the reason I wanted to do this webinar is to show you some of the new additions that have been made to the portal. Some of you in this group actually also contributed to these additions, so thank you for that as well. All right. Let's see here now. A couple of these additions we have been adding items in there related to the content area. Some content areas didn't have a ton of apps, so we added more. We also have sections that relate to the use of a tool, like this is a productivity tool, this is a collaboration tool. We also have things shared by audience type. You will really know that because if you're seeing it, then it's visible to you. So let's take a look at that. I also want to share with you a document that explains this a little bit more for you to publicly share with your networks as well. All right, so let's post this here. Clever communication. You might be wondering, what are some apps that I shouldn't be checking out right now? So some apps you might notice in your portal are obviously the essential communication tools that we've been talking about in BPS, Zoom and Google Meet for virtual conferencing, Google Classroom. And we have some links and guides here for how to use those tools safely, responsibly. So please check those out. If you're interested in webinars to understand how to use these tools, then we are offering them as well. We've linked to them here in the document. Once again, I'm talking about the featured reading apps. Those are in there as well if you wanted to learn more about how to use them. And then these are new additions, and they're temporary, only available until summer 2020. And they are Imagine Learning for math and for language and literacy. Lexia Core 5 for kindergarten to 5th grade, and Lexia Power Up for 6th grade and above. So these are adaptive learning software that you can access from now until sometime in the summer at a district-wide level. Beyond that, there's other kinds of conversations that will need to happen. But if you're interested in these platforms, please check them out. We also have for each one of these help docs for how to use the tool and who to reach out to if you need support. Because these are apps, like I said, that are rostered, they're paid for, they're more involved, and that's going to mean that you're going to have to be very specific with how you use this application. The guidance for the usage is also listed in those documents as well, if that's something you're interested in. And then finally, hopefully content folks will appreciate this. I wasn't able to list everyone's, but I did point out 3 applications that were brought in, but they're actually websites that really anyone can access and start using today. And that includes Derby for health and wellness, so like these fun fitness guides. Which one doesn't belong for math? Even though it's a math activity, I think there's a lot of components to it that are really just about awesome conversations and problem solving. And then Chrome Canvas, I think Suzanne was talking about using this tool right now. So if you want to visualize different items, then you can use Chrome Canvas for that. So these are some applications that we're highlighting, but it is not the full listing of all the applications in here. Okay. So some other updates that are really exciting, and Paul, thank you for bringing this up. This is brand new. There's actually analytics available at the district level and soon to be at the teacher level for you to see how students are currently interacting with the applications in Clever. So that can be the apps that you posted, that can also be external websites. And as long as they're using their BPS Chromebooks, we'll be able to get this data to see how kids are interacting with the applications. So let's take a look at what those analytics look like. These are actually pretty exciting, and they're really supposed to help us make informed decisions about supporting our students. So I will get to them at the district level, and I believe other people who are staff category will go to the dashboard to see that. And we look for the category of analytics. Unfortunately, I'm not logged in properly. I need to do that again. Let's do that. Try that again. But if you are able to access them in the meantime, please do. It should be under Dashboard Analytics, and then you should see a tab that shows that. Hopefully I'm able to get in. It might keep bouncing me out. This happens. All right. Let's see. Let me know in the chat if you're able to see them. If not, it might not be live yet. Let's try them one more time. If you're seeing the uh-oh on your screen and you continuously see that, that definitely means you are not in Clever. But I assure you, I am in Clever. All right. Awesome. So Suzanne is reporting that she's able to see those analytics. That's great. Okay. Let's try that again. Let's try logging in as a staff. See if that works. Fingers crossed. We're in. Awesome. All right. So this is the staff view. So this would be the central office view. If I go to the dashboard, there we go. It's logging me in. So far, so good. All right. Paul's able to see the analytics. Awesome. Okay. So now I'm going to navigate to my analytics tab. It's on the left side. And then there's a part that says EdTech Analytics. That might be what you see, or maybe it looks different for you. But more or less, it's showing you the 332 total applications here. So we have 87% of students are accessing Google Classroom. That's pretty impressive, which is a number we definitely want to see. And then also the numbers are high for Clever, but I think that's kind of a given because we already are in Clever just to see this. And then we have Google Docs and Zoom. So you can see lots of students are accessing this. And we can filter it down to see which Clever apps are the most popular. Khan Academy is up there. That's not surprising. Lexia, some little library apps, ones that just you add to your teacher page as a teacher. So this is actually something that you contribute to as a group. And quizzes is actually pretty high on the listing, and so is Nearpod. That's interesting. And then we have 190 other applications. This would include things like web links. So that's where Google Classroom is categorized. So we can look at the big picture view, or we can look at the Clever view or the teacher view or other applications. So this might be something that you can see at this time. If you don't, then you might just see some that are specific to your students. And we can talk more about what that looks like over time. All right. Okay. And there's lots of ways we can use this information to help get in touch with our students and support them. All right, so that's exciting with Clever. Now, as far as the customization goes, if you are a teacher, this is going to look familiar to you. If you're not, and you're at the district level, I think this is still useful for you to know. That way you can support teachers when they're asking you some of these questions. You know where to go, you know where they're making these updates. So if you are in a teacher view in Clever and you see those pages across the top, you want to open your class, and it's always going to be that first one there that has your name, which you can customize as well. And let me go to the page. So when you click on that, you should see something that looks like what's on my screen right here, where it is the, let's zoom in there, what's the name of my class, and then it has in the lower right corner the option to add links, apps, or categories. So that's how you can customize to share with your students. And everything that I'm sharing with you right now, you will have access to later. At the end of this webinar, I will be sharing a link to the form to fill out so that I can get everyone's names and then send you the slide deck afterwards, as well as the recording. All right, so you're able to customize by going to your page, and where it says category, link, and app. I actually do have a separate webinar where I go through this exhaustively, like detail by detail, so that you can see what that looks like. As far as some other applications go, I do want to mention to you that Common Sense Media is a fabulous resource. Everyone in the district should know about this and be looking at it. You may already have a preference for some sites, but there might also be others that people talk about all the time. Like a really good example would be ABC Mouse. I hear people asking me about ABC Mouse all the time, and I'm like, well, I don't use it as a teacher, so I want to do some research to see what are people saying about applications like ABC Mouse. So I'm going to share a link to that particular application with you in the chat. All right, here it is. Common Sense link. Okay, just posted in the chat. Remember to highlight it and copy and paste. All right, let's take a look at what they have to say. So if you're in the same position as me, where sometimes people are asking you questions about some of these applications, like what are they for, what do you recommend? You can do some filtering right here by grades, especially if you might be looking for a very specific grade. Like I could say second grade, I could scroll down and I can look for math and see what those recommendations are. And what's really nice about these particular recommendations is that it gives you not only the grades it's for and whether it's free to try or paid, but also gives you a privacy rating to say, is this a safe application for kids to use? And when we talk about privacy ratings, we're talking about like, are these applications using targeted advertisements for kids? Are these applications collecting personally identifiable information? So those are the biggest things that we want to look for when we think about privacy in applications. So all of these can be filtered and you can look up more information. I discovered happy numbers. Like someone was talking to me about happy numbers, but I don't really know much about happy numbers. So I could look here. I can also ask the math department what they think about happy numbers. So these are some examples of how you might utilize, tools like this. All right. So this is a little bit about what a page would look like on Common Sense if you're trying to discover more about an application that you're not familiar with, especially if you don't want to just download it and be like, oh, what am I got myself into? So it gives you the pros and cons, how you can teach with it, what it is it good for learning? And then down here would be the privacy rating. Unfortunately, they have not reviewed this tool yet, so it's not listed here. And then they give you some categories of other applications you can look at. Now, I really cannot emphasize enough how important it is to just start with the apps that you know you need right now. Don't be trying to be all app happy and download every free app that's out there. People do that, and rarely do they use all the apps. I would pick a few that you really think are solid and use those with your kids. You don't have to use everything that's out there. All right. And there are some applications that we can certainly share, at the district level, but that is a conversation that we would have to have with the school as well as content area folks. Like there were some inquiries from people at schools to add certain applications, and I talked to content area folks and they're like, no, we actually don't recommend that app. And so in that case, I tell the teacher, we're not going to put this in the district portal. However, if you want to add it to your own teacher page, you may do so, but this is not something that we're able to add at the district level. So that is something that I will be saying to people in these conversations, depending on what you're asking for. All right. So Common Sense is a good resource for you to look up different applications you might want to use. We also have the Clever Library. If you're a teacher, you might see up in the top right corner to check out the library. And then this is similar to Common Sense. It just gives you a listing of different applications that Clever has that they recommend for content areas. Again, not all of them are the best apps for you to use. You don't have to click on every one. All right. As far as the student view goes in Clever, it looks kind of similar to the teacher page. They're going to notice when they click on your class page, all the applications that you post there. So you can choose what kind of categories you want, as well as the apps or websites that fall underneath that particular category. And this is really important, especially if you want to make sure the kids are seeing what they need to see right away, and then you can give them more subcategories. Keep it simple. Don't put more on there than you need to put on there. One of the recommendations I actually made was across the top, you can just have a get started or open these first or important links, something along those lines. Then you put those things there. Then if you want, you can have subcategories that might be more specific to content if that feels appropriate. All right, so with all of that being said, thinking about the different views and how you might use data, I also want you to feel like you can be self-sufficient with learning about this beyond a conversation with me. So some links that will help you in this process. The very first one, I referenced this earlier, is our help docs. And our help docs are pretty much more or less a self-learning or knowledge base for everything technology related to BPS systems like Aspen, Clever, Google Classroom, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to post this link in the chat. I really encourage you to bookmark this. If you have a Lexia question or a Clever question, you can go here and look it up. I'm actually going to give you a quick little view of what it looks like, okay? So this is our knowledge base. If you go there to that link, you will notice a greeting page that says, how can I help you, or how can we help you? And then you can start typing whatever application there is. For example, if you are particularly interested in Lexia, you can find some articles on that. There we go, Lexia. Let's open that. And then it goes over the different ways you can access it and different points of contact for you. So this is really, really important, especially if you are trying to understand how to use some of these more involved apps that are in Clever. We have different PD opportunities for you as well as resources. So that's help docs. And then we also have a couple of other links. Clever Academy gives you a sense for students to go and just log in Sorry, let me restate. Clever Academy is a place for teachers to learn more about how to use Clever. So if you actually want to be doing that self-paced guide of like, this is how I'm going to design my teacher page, you can certainly watch my webinar, but also they go through that for you in Clever Academy. Clever Support also contains a very robust knowledge base of everything you want to know how to do in Clever. In fact, I use Clever Support today to understand how analytics are working because I was like, well, I'm not quite sure what the analytics view means. So I looked that up in Clever Support. All right. So overall, that is my spiel about Clever. I think that it's always a very good idea for students to get in the habit of logging in through Clever, especially if they're young ones, because it's a one-stop shop to access all the applications that they need from your class. You also can get them in the habit of getting in through Clever so they can get to apps like Lexia, apps that require single sign-on, because doing that outside of Clever will make it a little bit harder. You don't need to use Clever to get to Google Classroom, but it can be helpful because it's a central place to organize everything, and families can actually go into Clever with their students to see what they need, as opposed to reading all these emails where maybe there's information there or not. So as far as getting more applications on there goes, you can always reach out to me about that. And I think you've been learning from this webinar that I'm not going to say yes to everyone. And there are reasons for that. Is this an application that is for you? Is this an application for everyone? And who's everyone include? Is it students and teachers? How long are we going to have it? Is it free? Is it paid? Like all those questions are going to come up. And also you want to ask yourself, is the app I'm asking for, is this the only one that can do it? Or is there something else that I can access in Clever that would be the same? All right. So as far as the ongoing learning goes, we do continue to offer webinars on Clever and other topics. We also have some webinars on how to use Sora and some other library applications if you're interested in that. I'm going to post a link once again in the chat to our forum so that you can fill it out and get access to the slide deck and the recording. Let's do that one more time. Okay. Okay, let me post that in the chat. So link to forum. Okay. If you are also interested in attending future webinars and seeing what we have already done, because we've hosted a lot of them so far, I really encourage you to check out our website right here. Everything is listed on here, including previous and future webinars. Let me post that in the chat for you. Previous, so I should say on demand. I think that's helpful. On demand and live webinars. Here's the link. So 2 links were posted in the chat for you to check out. To fill out the form, make sure you highlight and copy and paste it. And also the on-demand and live webinar schedule for the coming days, or rather coming weeks, because there's a chance that that might be the case. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for joining. I will stick around and stop the recording if you have any more questions.